Welcome to the podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Clem, and this is Turns Out We're Gay.
I can't believe we're here. It's the last and final episode of season 1 for Turns Out We're Gay.
What a journey.
It has been quite the journey. What are we going to be chatting about today, Clem?
Well, today we're hitting a bit of a sore point for me. We're going to break down my first lesbian heartbreak. And I think this would be my only heartbreak, really. I've had a lot of times where I've either broken somebody's heart or I've been heartbroken for somebody. But this would probably be the only time that I was heartbroken about losing a partner. So we're going to talk about that because it seems to be that that's something that a lot of the queer community go through.
Yeah.
After that, we're then going to wrap up the season. We're going to talk about our experiences and we're going to do something special at the end. What's that?
We're going to go through favourite messages. We've had so many really cool messages come through from our listeners.
So many.
On all different platforms, and we're going to touch on some of our favourites and one being very, very special. So I'm excited to talk about that. So make sure you tune in right to the end.
Yeah, you never know. It could be your message if you've messaged
It could be. It could be. All right, let's jump into it. So your first lesbian heartbreak. Let's go.
Yeah, so I think we'll set the scene. When I met Sarah, I had just gone through what everyone talks about, the first lesbian heartbreak.
Yeah.
I had my heart shattered. I didn't and still don't know why that person made the decisions they made. I don't know what I did wrong or whatnot, and it broke me. And I had been through horrendous breakups. I had been through splitting up with a partner of 9 years. But for some reason, this person rattled me beyond my core.
Yeah.
And I was in no way thinking, I'm going to go meet someone right now. I was in no way thinking I'm going to commit to someone. I'm going to find my person and things like that. But lo and behold, you walk through the door and I was taken back by how comfortable you were in your own skin and in your own head that you were able to talk about all of that. Because I processed a lot of that with you and you were there for me and you let me process it. And I think you also saw that I wasn't in a space to be like, yep, 100% we're committed, let's lock everything down and things like that. It terrified me, the fact that I'd met you. You terrified me because you seemed so good and so pure and so right for me. And I thought, I cannot let my heart break like that again.
Yeah.
So I was really closed off and you were really patient and we communicated so much about everything. And that's the one thing I always say to people is I will always be honest. Ask me a question and I'll tell you the answer. Do not ask me a question if you do not want to know the answer. And that brings us to a pretty funny story. So I'd made it very clear to you that I wasn't committing to you. We hadn't met face to face at this point. And I was obviously still going through things and whatnot. So I'd said to you very clearly and you were totally fine with that. You weren't asking for that either at that point. You were still getting to know me.
No, and I was still going through a lot at that time, you know, separating from a pretty full-on situation and also dealing with my own challenges. And that's, you know, something I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in the future when I'm ready. But at the time that we met each other, I was not looking for anything. I even said that. I think people from TikTok who would remember from OG days, I was literally saying, I never want to get married again. I'm not looking for anything. I'm not looking for anyone because I was going through a horrible time with my own things. And I even said to you when we first started talking that I'm not ready. I need to make sure that I'm fully okay to come into this and be committed. And both of us said that at the start because we both were so instantly like, there's something here that is good and great and could be something more. And the last thing that I wanted to do was to jump into anything with you when you weren't ready and when I wasn't ready and I wasn't ready. But I think if we talk about you not being ready, you literally had, I don't think people quite know our timeline actually. Maybe let's talk about that. Before we committed to each other, we were talking for about 2.5 months. At least, maybe a little bit longer. We were talking for a long time. So sorry, TikTok, we fooled you. But Clem and I would say for that 2.5 months, we were like what I think other people would think is a relationship. Like we were talking every single day. We were on the phone all throughout the day. We were on FaceTime all through the night.
Yeah.
But we were not committed to each other. And it was really important to me that you not fully processed, but you processed enough of your breakup to be able to come into a relationship with me and be sure and be ready. And let's talk about how you processed that and how we communicated this. And I think let's just be honest. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up something that happened and you can cut this out or not, we'll see. But let's talk about G-Flip. So
What a great artist.
they are amazing and we love them.
And they throw a great party at
They
their
throw a
concerts.
great party, as Clem would know. But let's talk about G-Flip. So at this point, we had been talking for a little while, like probably a month and a half or maybe a bit more. There were a lot of feelings there. There was a potential for me to actually come to G-Flip and I'm so glad that I didn't. Not because of what happened at G-Flip, but because I think if G-Flip didn't happen, I don't think you would have been ready for what we have now.
Yeah.
And so you went to G-Flip and we had a conversation before G-Flip and I said, whatever happens at G-Flip, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
So we weren't together.
No.
There was no commitment, but we were heading that way. We
Yeah,
were
100%.
We were definitely heading that way. And you had 2 nights in G-Flip.
I'd like to give a bit of context to that. I had a very big weekend. A lot of alcohol was consumed and I went to G-Flip's concert 2 nights back to back in Sydney.
Yeah.
That mixed with a big night on the piers. Just to set the scene.
But also, let's add to that. You ran into a couple of people who were very important to your life, specifically the biggest heartbreak of your life. And the emotions were incredibly high. There was a lot going on. You ran into that person. We won't name names because I'm sure they don't want to be on the podcast.
No.
But
yeah, there was definitely 2 people that I ran into that were of very large significance.
Yeah.
One was the heartbreak and that was unexpected and took the wind out of me. Not only that, but they, updated me on what had been going on for them and a lot had been going on. Spent a lot of time with them talking about that and also bumped into someone that I never really was officially with. But we had a beautiful connection and they are such a beautiful soul. I met them at a really bad time and I wasn't ready for that. And yeah, I think it was just one of those moments that you just sort of, I don't know, it brought up so many emotions of seeing these people. One that I had hurt. I think what had happened was I had been really hurt. Once I had my lesbian heartbreak, I started to realize how much I probably hurt other people, which I didn't think about before.
yeah.
And so this was the person prior to the heartbreak and I had really hurt her and I didn't think about it. And it was the first time seeing her. And so I spent a lot of time with her going through that. I just had no idea how much I could hurt people until I guess I got hurt. Karma's a bitch, I guess. But I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but it was never something I thought about much.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this in another episode. When you came out, you were 18 again.
100%.
You were a teenager, a horny teenager, running around, wanting to, experience all different things and different people. But that's life. I think we've all hurt someone. When we finally spoke about this person in particular, I thought that was really big of you to do that and help them process their own emotions towards it and understand it. And, you've mentioned with your heartbreak recently that you still don't know. And so I imagine that other person really didn't know why you didn't go forward and why you weren't with them, what happened in between all of that. And so I think running into them and having that conversation would have really helped them process it, hopefully. But you had a big weekend of seeing all these people. And ultimately, Clementine Lockhart had quite a lot of fun.
I made the most of the weekend.
You definitely made the most of the weekend.
And I will be dead honest that a part of it was I was genuinely like, Sarah is such an incredible woman and I can see such a amazing future with her that it terrified me, and I almost, as ridiculous as it sounds and as immature as it sounds, I was like, I need to get things out of my system.
I think you also wanted to convince yourself that you weren't good enough.
I 100% believed that.
Yeah.
I didn't need to convince myself. I believed that. I think a part of it was me acting that way. Anyway, cut the story short.
What's unfortunate is that when I found out about all these things, I think you were expecting me to be popping off or angry or upset or whatever, but instead we talked through it.
You were definitely upset.
I was no,
initially.
okay. So initially, let's just talk about how I found out.
I FaceTimed you
Yeah.
the night after I was driving. I don't even remember where I was driving.
It was when you were driving home, because when we spoke later that day, you were in the bath.
I was in the bath.
You were in the bath because you were so hungover. This was after night 2. So you were driving back
the
to...
bath?
Yeah, you were so hungover you were in the bath.
I hate baths at the best of times.
I know, but you were in the bath. I remember vividly.
That would be I'm just trying to think. That would be the worst thing for a hangover, is sitting in a hot
where
bath.
You were.
Wait, when you saw, I wasn't in the bath, I was driving.
No. You were driving, but I remember you were driving home because later that day when we ended up talking, you were in a bath. You called me, your camera wasn't working, and so we were just chatting.
Oh, you think you FaceTimed me or something, and I just called you back because I thought, oh, well, I'm driving, my phone's down there, you're not going to see anything anyway. And then you said something like, oh, well, I'd love to still see your face or whatever. And I was like, yeah, bet. I obviously would love to see your face, but I won't be looking because I'm driving. And so we FaceTimed, and I'm driving along and we're just having a little chit chat. And not long into the conversation, you sort of said, well, what's that? And I said, what are you talking about? And you were like, you have something on your neck. What is that? And I looked in the mirror and I actually had no idea that was there. I was literally just talking to you. Like, the other thing is the camera angle was literally just straight onto that section of my, like, that side of me. And so on my neck I had a hickey. I don't know who gave it to me. And to be honest, and I said this to you, and now that you have been out in Sydney, you can kind of understand it. It could have been a gay guy. It could have been a friend. It could have literally been anyone, to be honest. Probably wasn't, but it could have been. I don't know who it came from. I don't know when I got it. I don't know what night of the weekend I got it. But I had a big hickey on my neck, and you definitely noticed it.
I noticed it, and in that moment, I had a lot of feelings, and I just said, we're going to stop the conversation, and we're going to come back to this later, because whatever I'm going to say now is going to come from a place of pain, anger, and I actually you don't deserve that because we've had a conversation. So let me go process that, and then we'll come back to this later.
I think I almost vomited.
You did.
I felt horrible.
You felt, yeah, you did.
Because even though we had that conversation that, things probably were going to happen that weekend and whatnot, you'd asked not to know about it, and it was literally shoved in your face, not by intention, but I felt horrible. And I also felt horrible that I did all of that because I knew that we had this connection.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think
G-Flip needed to happen for you.
It sounds so funny because it sounds like I was with G-Flip.
You
when you said it like that, I was not.
You weren't with G-Flip, but
G-Flip needed to happen. Poor G-Flip.
Poor G. Sorry, G. Also come on the podcast. But I think that weekend we were having a lot of conversations around, I could tell that you were feeling like you weren't enough or good enough, or like you put me on this pedestal, and I said, stop it. Like, stop putting me on this pedestal. I don't need to be there. And so I think without G-Flip weekend happening, I don't know if we would be where we are.
I don't think we would.
Where we are now. I think we would have ended up here, but I think it would have taken a lot longer.
Yeah.
But also, it may not have even happened. And this comes back to open communication, because I went away. I felt my feelings. I went shopping, retail therapy. And then I went for a drive. I was taking my nan at the time to another town. And so I had about an hour's drive there and back. And the whole time I was like, why am I feeling this way? I'm feeling this way because I love her, because I don't want someone else to touch her. But at the same time, I was feeling that way because I didn't have control, because we weren't together at that point. I hadn't met you, you hadn't met me, and there was so many emotions. But at the end of the day, we'd had a conversation, and that conversation was fair, and it happened. So we talked about it later, and I said, okay, let's go through this. And we went through it. You said, you ask what you want to know. I asked what I wanted to know, which was not very much. And then I said, okay, it's going in the box. And it went in the box. And the only reason why it's come up again is because a few other situations from G Flip have unfortunately come up in either on TikTok or I think a friend of a friend followed me, and I was like, who's this? And you were like, oh, that's awkward. And so when that happened, actually, when I got that friend request and I was like, who's this person? And you were like, well, this is the situation. We ended up having a whole conversation about G Flip weekend, about another situation that we won't go into, but we ended up having a whole conversation and we got to the bottom of everything. And immediately it was like, perfect, thank you, it's in the box. And now it would never come up in a future argument. No. Not that we really argue. I would never use it as, well, you can't do that because you did this.
Yeah, for sure.
It would never be used as like power over you, because it was dealt with. We communicated it. Whatever feelings were said and had. And of course, if I had feelings about it, or if you had feelings about something else, we'd talk about it, but it's not used in an argument, or it's not used to like hurt the other person. And so, yeah, I think though, if this was maybe someone else or I don't know, what's your thoughts if you have had this with other people, or what's your experience with that?
I've had multiple exes that are very good with communication and very secure. So I think it would have been fine in those situations, you know, not as good as how you took it and we communicated, but it wouldn't have been a disaster. I have other exes that literally, when people say shit hit the fan, like it would have been World War III. Even though, you know, boundaries and commitment and things like that were spoken about, I would have been called every name under the sun. So it was actually a really positive experience in the end, because it also allowed me to see how secure you are and how well we can communicate, and how we both have a very similar communication style, and we allow each other to feel what we need to feel and to talk through as much as we need to.
Yeah.
And I think more than anything, being able to talk about this on this platform shows that we can communicate about almost any topic, absolutely any topic, I'd say, and break things down and be safe and comfortable to sort of talk about these things. So I think that's just been a really positive thing for me.
I hope that hearing us being able to navigate these conversations encourages other people to talk more openly with their partner and like have difficult conversations, because at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be a negative thing. You learn so much more about your partner when you create a safe space to navigate, you know, feelings and emotions and healing without judgment. And I think that's been really positive. So I hope people listening in and hearing how we can talk about things that might be uncomfortable or challenging to some, to hear like, about their partner having feelings about someone else, or, you know, we've talked a little bit about you having, you know, slept with other people on a night out and things like that. But there's no judgment here and we can talk about it freely. And I hope it encourages other people to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on how, you know, we've created a safe space for each other to talk about these things. And I think that's been a common theme in the messages we've got from our audience. So I think that's a really nice place to move to the part where we wanted to talk about some of the favourite messages we've received, because we have had an absolute flooding of messages, and a lot of them being supportive from our friends, just, you know, so proud of you, you guys are doing so well, we love it, you know, I listened to it on my way here and whatnot, and we love that. And it has made all of this worth it. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and I don't think people realise how much time we spend, not only me editing and working on those things creatively, but also planning and thinking out about the topics and how that's going to benefit someone that would listen to it and things like that. So it makes it worth it for us.
I totally agree, and I think even more to that, it's the energy that we have to bring to every episode. We want to make sure that it's coming through, and then there's, you know, social media and responding to everyone. And there's so much more that goes into a podcast. We're not doing this for anything other than putting out a good message to people, we hope, and hearing these messages have been nothing but rewarding. So why don't we jump into that then? I think, like you said, it's a really good segue to talk about some of our favourite messages. Yes, we've had a flooding of people come through and we appreciate every single one of you, but we've chosen 3 in particular that have really just impacted us when we've read them. And why don't you start off with one from someone I think you know, right?
Yeah, this one actually came from someone that I went to school with in high school. We were quite close then. We sort of lost touch, as you do with a lot of people in high school. But a really lovely friend of mine, and he reached out and we hadn't spoken. And it kind of touches to the point that we do this podcast not only for the queer community, but also for the people that either want to be allies to the community or have people that, you know, their friends or family that are in the community and they want to know how best to support them and things like that. As I say, we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. We're learning as we go, and we've learnt so much doing this. But
absolutely,
that's definitely one of the sort of branches we want to hit and be able to have a safe space for people that aren't in the queer community but want to give people in the queer community the best experience they can. So I'll just read out this message from my friend. Hey, very bizarre, out of the blue message. Just wanted to say I saw you started a podcast and I thought I'd give it a listen. You guys are incredible. One of the most natural and easy to listen to podcasts I've heard in a long time. Such an important topic. I am that friend and family member of a few people in similar positions to yourself, and I found it super fun to listen to and really insightful as well. And I just think that for me was so amazing to hear that people that are heterosexual and cisgender are able to listen to it and still learn and really connect with what we're saying and be able to take that and put it into action to make someone else's life in the queer community a more positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially touching on that friends and family piece, I think that's been in that first episode that we did, we were really focusing on that as being a key point. So I think that's really nice. We had another message come through from a listener of ours that we don't know. It's a new listener, and we love getting messages from new listeners. So it says, "Hi, Clem and Sarah. I hope you are getting millions of these messages already, but I just want to share how happy I am to have discovered your podcast. You are exactly what I needed to hear at this stage of my life, and you were completely right in saying there is an importance in sharing your stories for other people in similar positions to not feel alone. I've been able to relate to so many things, and hearing them makes me feel so much more normal." And I love that last bit, feeling so much more normal, especially for me anyway. I didn't feel normal for so long, and I didn't want to come out, and I was very ashamed. And I think that is why I chose this message in particular, because that was something that was really important to me when starting this podcast, is I wanted a place for other people who were sitting in the same positions that we were in to come here and not feel judged, and to listen to two very normal people go through what they're going through right now, and to see that it is completely normal to be exactly who you are. So absolutely loved that message.
Yeah, I love the normal line as well. I think it's so important. I think that's something that we've said before, is that we want to make this something that is normal. At the end of the day, we want to normalise being queer. It should be.
Yeah.
I think people would misunderstand when people are waving a rainbow flag and they're proud to be who they are and things like that. They think that we're trying to persuade them to be something else, or trying to push our way of life onto someone else, and that's absolutely not the case. We want to be so proud and so loud that it is something that people don't even think about. The more we are proud to be who we are, the more normal it's going to be. So I loved that line. It definitely jumped out to me as well.
And you mentioned something like this, I think it was in Kira's episode or Holly's episode, where you said, I hope we get to a point where it's just normal to be queer or straight or whatever you want to be. It's just a normal thing. It's not a surprise or shock factor, or you don't have to come out. You just are who you are. And yeah, so that message really resonated with me. So thank you to that wonderful listener. And we have a really special message that we got after our first episode, and this one really sits close to our heart. And Clem, I think this came to you directly, so I think it's important that you read this one out.
Yeah, this one meant a lot to me to get. So I got a message, and I'm changing the wording a little bit, obviously for privacy reasons for this person. But hi, lovely. I've obviously been pretty quiet lately. I've been struggling a little bit with something, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you to both you and Sarah, because without actually having watched your podcast, I probably wouldn't have the courage to have done it and been open about it. I've been struggling the past few months with my own identity and have come to the realization that I am non-binary. I've just gotten the courage to tell my partner I'm going to let my peers know tonight, and that's why I have been so distant lately. I just wanted to say a big thank you, and I appreciate you more than words. And I think for me, I almost cried when I got it. You know, it obviously, they had been a little bit quiet, and I had still reached out and tried to keep the conversation going and things like that. But I had noticed that, and we'd even spoken about them being quiet. And then when I got this message, it made so much sense. And I was just so happy for them, proud of them, and proud of us for putting out content to make the difference that we really wanted and intended at the start, was to really encourage people to be themselves.
Yeah.
And to be proud of it. They used the message we were speaking about, our own journeys and our own challenges, and they were able to take that into the circumstances they needed at that time, was extremely powerful.
Absolutely. And I know that this person is a frequent weekly listener, and we are so proud of you. And getting that message, especially after the first episode, you know, I remember when that first episode came out, we were like, is anyone even going to listen? Is this content even good? Like, I don't even know. I mean, we thought we had something, but to have other people message and say that it's something and there's some light to it, and then to get something like that from someone that we value so much, it's really driven the rest of the season, I think. And it's really set ways for the conversations that we want to have, because when we started out with this, you know, we weren't wanting to be another kind of drama channel. We wanted to be something that made people feel comfortable and to come here and listen, and for it to be more than just you and I chatting. We wanted this podcast to be bigger than who we are. And I think getting that message, I would say, and I hope you agree, really set the stone for what we want this
and what we're doing.
And what we're doing, and future episodes and future speakers and who we want on here, because we want to make an impact. So yeah, that message is really special, and we are so proud of you. You know who you are.
Yeah, we are. We are so proud of you.
Yeah.
We love you
Absolutely.
so much. Yeah, it really meant so much to us.
Absolutely.
So thank you for messaging that and being comfortable enough with me and with Sarah to share that with us, because it really did touch us and make an impact on what we're doing. And like you said, it helped shape the rest of the season, and I think what's to come as well. So yes, and also all the other messages that we've got have been so incredible, and is what continues to drive us to have the motivation to keep putting in the hours that we do to produce this stuff, because we love it and we love that it's making a difference for people. So please do message in any feedback you have, or even if there's topics that we haven't covered, we really would love to hear about that as well, because yeah, we want to make this content for you guys. And if there's something that we're not talking about that you want us to, then absolutely reach out and we'll do our best to fit it in.
Absolutely. One final thing on the messages that I'm noticing as well, before we sort of move on to our experiences, is a lot of people are saying that we're filling a gap that I guess the podcast market hasn't seen, where we're having open conversations about later in life queerness, or just queer life in general, but really delving into, you know, challenging topics. For me anyway, I really want to focus on finding those gaps in the queer life and really focusing on those. So if you think there's any other, like you said, if there's any other episodes that you're keen on hearing that you're not hearing on other podcasts or whatever, you know, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Message on Instagram or whatever. But yeah, so I think that's definitely our goal going forward, was just to keep filling those gaps and keep representing the queer community and doing what we can to keep pushing that narrative and the conversation forward for the community.
Yeah. And we're only just getting started.
We are. So I think we've kind of touched a bit about of our experience of it. And I think we can touch a little bit more. But my experience of it has been so tremendously positive. It was terrifying at the start.
Yeah.
I think there's one thing to come out to your family and friends, and that comes with so many challenges and so many difficulties. But if you think about putting your story out online in such a vulnerable way, I think it was terrifying for us at the start. But like I said, it's paid off with the impact we've made for a few people that have messaged us, all of the messages we've received. But for those couple that we've got that are so impactful, and it says that they've changed their narrative because of the stuff they've heard here, or they've been able to be themselves or whatnot, for me, that just makes every second worth it. And it has been a lot. And there's been times where we've both spent countless hours and had frustrating moments, but it's been worth every single second for me.
Absolutely. It is totally worth it. And it's been probably one of the biggest achievements for me. And I've got some achievements in my life that I'm very proud of, but this is probably one of the biggest ones, to be able to not only sit in front of a mic and talk about things that can be uncomfortable at times, but to have feedback to say that what we're talking about makes an impact is so amazing and incredible. And it's just driven me further to want to not only come out with good content to us, but to find other people to bring into the podcast and help our community and listeners. And so it's been a wonderful experience for me, a challenging one to say the least. I think people don't quite understand what it's like when you sit in front of a microphone and, you know, we have a small production going on with lights and cameras and, you know, you got a lot to think about, but it makes it all worth it in the end. Yeah, it's been an experience.
I think you probably have an extra difficulty with having the shooter, producer, editor being your partner. Sometimes I tell her to repeat something and she's not quite so keen on that. But I think we've learned more about each other and we've had much more in-depth conversations than we had before that, and we can just continue to grow with communication, with being open, and I love it, and I love seeing you flourish in this environment.
You too. And can we just say that Clem is a fantastic producer and does all of this on her own and spends countless hours in ways that I can't even describe. So well done to you. And I'm so excited for season 2 and what not only the content we make, but what you end up editing and putting out. You are incredibly talented.
Well, I appreciate that. I wasn't trying to fish for that, but I'll take it. I'll definitely take it.
No, take it. So that's been our experience, and I think now we're going to take a well-deserved couple of weeks break.
Absolutely.
So to our regular listeners, I'm sorry you're going to have to hold off for a couple of weeks, but it's all going to be worth it, because another thing we've learned is when you're going into each recording session, you want quality, you want to know that this is going to go somewhere and it's going to be impactful, and we don't want to put content out that's just being made up on the spot. So the next few weeks, we're actually in Bali at the moment, enjoying our nice little break, but also it's going to be for a lot of planning and recording while we're here so we can bring out season 2, and it's going to be bigger and better and so many other things, and we're really, really excited. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We had an idea at Christmas, but we started most of the planning having a swim in a pool.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up in the pool without even realising, having a bit of a meeting or brainstorm session for season 2, and it seems to be the running theme. So we're going to have a lot of pool meetings over here in Bali, and we're very lucky to be in that position. But we are really spending a lot of time and a lot of energy focusing on what we can do to make it bigger and better and keep creating the content that we ourselves would have loved to have seen going through what we went through. So we're working really hard, but we're going to have a couple of weeks off. I need a little bit of a break from editing, and then we're going to get straight back into it, straight back into the thick of it, and hopefully you'll have some really cool content coming your way really soon.
So before we sign off for the final time, before our break, if you haven't already, please follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. It really helps put our podcast into not only the charts, but it pushes it into new audience, which is what we're really hoping for. Share your favorite short that you've seen on Instagram or TikTok to a friend or on your story or anything like that really, really helps get this to the audience that we're wanting to get it to. We've grown our audience incredibly in our first season, more than we ever thought. And we want to get this far and wide. And we think that Turns Out We're Gay can be, impactful in not just in Australia, but in so many other countries with so many different speakers. So we really want to get our podcast out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially I think in this break, well, we will still be trying to put out content and a bit of behind the scenes stuff and things like that. But if you can sort of keep the momentum going that we've worked so hard, we're going to keep trying to do so ourselves as well. But me being the creative that I am, I have so many plans and visions for what Turns Out We're Gay could become. So we need to keep all together building that momentum and working hard to creating that safe space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for the final time, thank you all for listening so much. This is a wrap on season 1. Love you. Bye.